Hello there! So in this video I'm going to talk about how I got into metal and black metal especially. So the first time I discovered heavier stuff, when you can call it that, was in the late 90s, early 2000s when I got into nu metal. I was born in 1988 and got into high school in 1999. So from then on, early 2000s, nu metal became popular. Nowadays, I don't like nu metal at all. So I much prefer pretty much every other genre of heavy metal music compared to nu metal. But it was back then, so more than 25 years ago, it was my so-called gateway drug into heavier stuff. It was very popular at the time amongst all my friends and my peer group at the time. And the first bands I listened to were stuff like The Offspring, Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, Slipknot, Crazy Town, and stuff like that. A little bit later, I got into Marilyn Manson. I think it was in 2003 when I discovered his then recent album, The Golden Age of Grotesque. And it was a little bit more hardcore compared to the other stuff. And at the same time, I also played video games back then on the computer. For example, GTA Vice City, which also came out, I think, around that time, 2003. And in one of the radio stations there, they also played some heavy metal stuff. And I got gradually I got into heavier stuff like traditional heavy metal, like the old school 70s and 80s bands. I'm still a huge fan of, and also heavier stuff like thrash metal, death metal, and black metal. So nowadays I'm more like an old school guy, so I much prefer like 1980s old school thrash metal, late 80s, early 90s death metal, and also 80s and 90s black metal. I will listen to new stuff occasionally, especially black metal. I would say this is my favorite musical genre when it comes to metal music in general. But there's so much stuff, so much new stuff coming out, so you don't have much time to get into newer stuff. And the classics you listen to, like when you were very young, will always be, for me at least, your preferred music. So around that time, so back in 2003, 2004, and so on, I was like an edgy teenager, and I was very interested in Satanism, occult, evil, and stuff like that. And of course, the black metal and the occult nature of black metal was very interesting for me at that time. So I can remember back then I was once in a public library and read a book about Satanism and sects, and there was also the Norwegian black metal scene was mentioned in there. So all the usual suspects like Count Grishnak, Euronymous, Dead, and so on. The church burnings were mentioned. And for a teenager with 15, 16, 17 years old at the time, it was very interesting. So that's the reason I got into black metal, because I was looking for the most evil, satanic, occult stuff. And yeah, that's how I discovered the Norwegian black metal scene. So the classic bands, you probably are familiar with them if you're a black metal listener, like Mayhem, the shirt I'm wearing, Burzum, Immortal, Emperor, Darkthrone, of course, and so on. And from then on, I also discovered the old school first wave black metal from the back in the 1980s, Venom, Battery, Celtic Frost, and so on, and also the scenes of different countries. For example, the Brazilian scene with Sarcophago, the Greek scene with, for example, Rotting Christ and bands like that. And yeah, it's still one of my, or the most favorite metal genre I listen to. I like both, like the really satanic, hardcore stuff, but I also prefer, also like the atmospheric stuff I got into a little bit later. From then on, I also discovered stuff like Dungeon Synth, for example. Yeah, and I still listen to black metal nowadays, especially the older bands I discovered a long time ago, as I mentioned. But what brought me into black metal back then was like all the black metal lore. So, for example, the Mayhem band history with the suicide of Dead and his whole backstory. Also, the murder of Euronymous, all the players in the Norwegian black metal scene, of course, Mark Vikernes, also Faust, the murder Faust committed. So, yeah, I think when you're a teenager, edgy teenager, back at that time, I was interested in Satanism, occultism, and stuff like that, and that what brought me into the genre. But what kept me in there was the music itself. I still love it, and yeah, what's more to say? Also, um, back then, so even before I discovered metal music, I was a little bit of a role playing geek. So I remember, so like in 2001, 2002, when I was very young, 13, 14 years old, I played with some friends and classmates of mine. I played RPGs, role playing games. And at the same time, I also played computer games like Baldur's Gate or Icewind Dale. And I was fascinated with Tolkien's work, so of course, The Lord of the Rings. And you find a lot of that symbolism also in many black metal bands. So that was one other key aspect which brought me into becoming a metalhead and liking black metal. Yeah, this was a brief video. I hope I will be back with some more videos soon. I was very busy the last months and also became a father, so I didn't have much time to make new videos. But I hope to present you some interesting topics soon. I also will add some powerlifting videos soon. I have a competition coming up very soon in 2 days, and yeah, keep you guys updated.